Chapter 7. But the miracle did happen, and so Josephine ought to have begun believing. It started with the postal delivery, to the guardhouse, which was to be censored with the rest of the officers' mail. It was beside the courtyard where the small kitchen was, with a back building and a copper. Officers' clothes were sent to the town to be laundered. Josephine did her own. Habville Post A. Holton, called the guard, his SEHWA tilde currency bis an accent out of place in Saxon. Simar 1/4 SS Beam Sorten HL Efton. It was early morning, and it delayed things somewhat so she could think of a plan. The keys to the safe were on the first floor. Money was kept there on a Thursday to pay wages. Disguise as an old man or woman from Colditz was so trite that it might work. Or a broken bar. A broken bar. Her mind raced. A broken bar. A broken bar. And as she had passed maybe a dozen letters across to the officers for censor, making sure the Red Cross parcels and all the illicit objects in them, Eggers and Prum had to know, surely, she came across a hand she recognized. Out of the envelope that Paddy had written was a shear of wood. A thin plane of camphor wood fell out into her hand. Hab Meerdas, the Schwabison officer told her. And Josephine yielded, though theft from prisoners' parcels was strictly forbidden. Brendas auf dem Fuhrsane. Our room is damp, his colleague commented, and it stinks like a damn kobold. Though growing dread in stomach that she would be taken away and interrogated over Sterling's disappearance, Josephine brazened it out, and stuffed Paddy's letter to Sterling into her uniform. Duty only a broken bar Bill would know that she had done what he had asked of her. That was one blessing. As long as the man didn't get himself into any reckless, willful trouble, then her death would have been for nothing. But it never happened. Josephine had gone via the inner wall and into the inner section of the castle to check out the solitary cell, see if Sterling had left anything at all behind that could be of any use. When she saw it was bolted and locked, she had the presence of mind not to appear startled to see him, eyes closed, on the camp bed. Sterling opened them when he heard footsteps. Your brother has gone, he told her, when she had got back in. He passed her gate key. No fun at all to escape with a key when I can escape using my wit. You'll be here a mighty long time then. Josephine bit back, her face stinging at the remembrance of her assault. Presumably William Joyce had, presumably, enough information for a few more broadcasts. That's not polite, Sterling taunted. Life is good, my love is alive, and you look even more haunted as usual. And, he emphasized, I've been given a place permanently down with my fellow officers. He grinned, whereas you are a liar and a thief and a cheat and a traitor, and everything you touch is coming down around your ears. Words. They were just words, mostly based in fiction which Josephine could not argue to accuracy. O'Reilly too, Sterling added. So presumably, something might be going right for you. Miss Joyce. Mrs. O'Neill, Josephine replied, softly to herself, and her mind took her to happier days, of wide open fields and moorland, and lanes that went on forever and ever. In answer to Sterling's desire for her to repeat herself, she put down the letter from Paddy in front of him. He glanced up to Josephine, then back to the letter, predictably, open, and looked at the words. Had I 3 lives, I'd die in such a cause, and rise, with ghosts, over the well-fought field. Prepare, prepare, prepare to meet our fathers in the sky. Sterling read William Blake's poem Coming Alive between them. My compatriot in arms wants me to be ready, Sterling told her, animated. He wants us to remember kings past. A broken bar. Alfred, William the Conqueror, the Lion Heart. A broken bar. And Edward I. Josephine added, the reason your family has power and money and influence. He writes well. Sterling glanced back at her, eyes alive with mirth. Paddy Mayne is the one singular reason that the SAS is still together, and has been made a proper regiment, Sterling told her. He's a mad, crazy bugger, would kill you for your republicanism. He's a unionist. Then, Sterling shook his head. No, oh number. He's much more than that. He's an Irishman. And you're a Scot, yet I see no kilt. Josephine snapped back. It was a weak jibe, but she didn't want to listen to this man's opinion of the only person in this bent, broken world who she loved with her soul. And then, it made sense, total, utter sense to Josephine. "I'll get you the iron you asked for, this time," she added, for effect. "Though why you feel you want to dress so smartly when you're stuck in here, Major Sterling." A broken bar. She strode out, locking the door behind her, knowing the confusion she had caused and taking the gate key with her and slipping it back onto the hook she had taken it from the night before. Clearly not missed, she thought. The Bavarian guard had probably been drinking, taking her time to mangle her blouse and skirt and hang them onto the scullery's inside line. She gathered incidents before with Germans not taking no for an answer, so she kept the door locked. She then heated the iron over the copper's metal lid before scurrying upstairs. It was a child's trick, something taught by older siblings for innocent fun. Perhaps so basic that no one noticed. But it was why Paddy had done it, perhaps. Or expediency. Perhaps he had arrived in a place with quantities of citrus fruit. "Take your shirt off then, Sterling, or it will cool. And I'm not the maid." She handed him the letter again. By taking her time, the warmth of the spring sunshine had done its job, penetrating the stone walls of the castle, and the potent smell of citrus, grapefruit, she considered, and the solitary cell was filled with the odor. "Take it off," she insisted, picking up the letter. "You know, Miss Joyce, there are subtler ways to go about pressing your advantage." Josephine scowled, taking in a view of his lithe, muscular body, an endless story of irregard to the rules of life. She gestured to the table, and she placed the letter onto one part of the cloth, before folding it over. Whether he was simply playing along, or whether Sterling had grasped that his friend had potentially written a message in fruit juice on the back of the first, she could not tell. Handing him the iron, she stood back, acting scornful. The smell of lemons burst into the room. They looked at one another. "Clearly, your friend has been enjoying Indian tonic to combat the mosquitoes," she told him, as Sterling lifted the iron and peeled back the half-pressed shirt. A small stain of brown appeared on the khaki, a deeper hue on the paper itself. It was clear to Josephine that there was more written on the back, and the camphor had been used to disguise the smell. "Close the door," Sterling instructed her, as they both forgot themselves for want of the intrigue. 88,888,888. June 1941. She reached for a hidden radio set, the one that didn't connect to London or the Free French headquarters, tuning the dial with a precision a piano tuner would have envied. A crackle, and a short lag. She waited for one more second. "The weather is clear for the harvest," she whispered into the receiver. On the other end, in a darkened basement in an office underneath the streets of Strasbourg, a German Abwehr officer smiled, as he noted down the signals. They were in order as much as he could tell, for they had come at the same time each night for the last 4 months. They were codes by which the Reich was handing over intercepts. These began with, "Heil Hitler," and continued with, "On behalf of the Algerian movement of independence." Clearly, they were intercepts, and the unfortunate enemy would be in the hands of the Seekerists shortly. By handing over the SO's arrival windows and their bluff codes, the secret signals meant to warn London if an agent was captured, Eve was giving the Germans a clean sweep. She wasn't doing it for Hitler. She was doing it for a price. German arms shipments to North African nationalists and the systematic weakening of the French military. Every British agent she sent to a Gestapo execution dock was one less obstacle to a future where the French Empire was too broken to hold on to Algiers. 88,888,888. April, 1943. Somewhere in Sicily, Sterling Reed. "Dear David, we did it. Sicily is taken, and I'm still here to write to you. I won't dress it up. The night was hell. We went in ahead of the armies, a handful of us against wire, mines, and guns dug into the bluffs. The sea was full of voices we weren't allowed to answer. That will stay with me longer than the fighting. The Italians thought there were hundreds of us. There weren't. We charged anyway, lost good men, took the nests, fired the flare before dawn. When the ships came in behind us, I knew we'd done our part. They say this is the beginning of the road back into Europe. I hope it means the road leads home, for both of us. Hold on. The world is changing faster than your cell walls can keep up with. The evening has come to join us. Your friend, Paddy Robert, Josephine breathed, and then remembered herself. In fact, she had a lot of remembering to do, and hardened her face as her mind swam in the love of her half-sibling. Sterling looked over the letter again and then over to Josephine. He narrowed his eyes. "What?" Josephine snapped. She scowled at Sterling. He tutted at her and held out the missive. "Take it," he instructed, scornfully. "Add it to your brother's report, burn it. It's nothing the Germans don't already know." He looked at her face and raised his hand with the letter in. Josephine took a step backwards, expecting a blow. Instead, she swept it from his fingers, retrieved the now cool iron and swept out of the cell, locking it securely behind her. He had remained, and the key was replaced. "Oh," she called through the hatch on the door, when she remembered what Eggers had told her when she had come up with the iron, "You'll be delighted to know that you are free to leave Solitary." And then, she considered her backup plan, and, later still, the vast, gaping chasm of emptiness that she had experienced when she thought that Major David Sterling had run. The plan had been how to steal enough money and escape the unescapable prison, to get herself to America, as William Joyce had once done. Behind her trod Eggers, who had passed her earlier. "Has the Major in order his uniform?" he tried, in imperfect English. "Yes," nodded Josephine. "So you interrogate him now?" He lingered beside her and Josephine pushed Paddy's letter to Sterling into her pocket. "Sit," she said, her face impassive, as she opened the door which she had only just closed. Sterling, who was on his feet smoking a cigarette, turned with comic slowness to the door, bowed his head in mock deference, then sat, folding his long frame into the chair by the desk with deliberate slowness. His face irradiated hostility, and he looked between her and Reinhold Eggers. Josephine expected nothing less, particularly considering their collaborative efforts to reveal Paddy's hidden message. It had disturbed her that she had let her guard down. Sterling clearly felt the same. Josephine opened up the ledger that Eggers had perused and handed to her outside the door, and she did not meet Sterling's eyes. More information had been added, and she was to instruct him on the contents, creating a narrative that she had expected him to fill. He would not comply. It was standard, but she prepared to do it anyway. "You need to eat more, Major," she advised, without interest. "Then your next escape attempt will be more successful." He glared at her, then smiled, slyly. And for a moment, Josephine wondered whether he was about to turn her over. "I just wish you'd get on with it, Sterling," she added. "Then Hauptmann Eggers will be able to give me someone else to interrogate who is not so." She picked up a drinking glass, and slammed it off the table, unforthcoming. Sterling's face did not change, but his hand did. He reached towards the table and pulled the shards of glass into a pile in front of him. Then, he sneered back at Josephine. "And what do you suppose you will do with those?" she demanded. "What do you suppose you will do with that? Come at me. You've gauged that your response will be faster than I am with these?" He laughed, shaking his head. "These will be in your eyes faster than you can move with that, I can assure you." Josephine held his gaze. "For the end point of what, Major?" "To overcome me, then overcome Captain Eggers." "A broken bar, then what?" "The rest of the castle, alone." She bent lower, nearer his face. "Because if you wanted to escape, you could have done so last night." "I bet a rock you could have done." Eggers looked between them, then decided that it was an English idiom, and resigned back to the position of observer. Josephine sat down, broken drinking glass still in hand, and then pulled the ledger over to her, glancing at the new notes that had been carefully scribed into it. She leaned back, assessing him as if analytically, for she had learned that it angered and infuriated him, which caused him to forget himself, and say things, immeasured. "You know what they think of you here. Dangerous, incorrigible, unruly. Bader won't have you on any plan of his." "I'm flattered. He told me so himself." "You are not Raff. Didn't you consider joining up if you liked the air so much?" "He holds you in contempt, as do the lieutenants." Sterling said nothing. "Such as, when they identified a landmark for you, and you denied hearing of it. How forgetful you are when you have just been reminded of it." "There, Moosey." She had been telling him the truth, and he knew it. But she would not let go of Eve Mansoura's innocence. Sterling felt fury rise, sharpened by the memory of a woman he loved. She was alive. He had been told so. Innocent, this bitch in front of him was the liar. Yet she had not been lying about Musi. Alt or Uth, a broken bar. She could have dopped those coordinates on purpose for Collins to find a broken bar. A broken bar. Was she the devious, the woman who had, just now, behaved with such abandon to discover what the secret message was? A broken bar. A broken bar. As had he a broken bar? He snorted. She was winding him up now, methodically, because agitation enabled Ethan to weaken those under interrogation. You murdered her, he said, his voice flat but dangerous. And you enjoyed telling me why. But, Sterling smirked, she lives. Josephine looked away for a moment, the stream of French villagers in her mind again. If she does, Josephine retorted, leaning closer to him, then I will not rest until I succeed in wiping her off the face of the planet. That did it. Sterling swept the glass shards from the table and onto the floor, a few embedding into his hand. If I ever get my hands on you, he said, evenly, leaning forward, no attempt at restraint now, I will kill you. Slowly enough to make it matter. Don't mistake me for someone who needs permission. Josephine regarded him without reaction, as though he had commented on the weather. If you kill me, she said, you'll do it cleanly. You won't enjoy it. You don't have the stomach for that kind of pleasure. His mouth curved, cold and feral, learned obsequiousness falling away. You don't know a thing about what I'm capable of. I know exactly what you're capable of, she replied. That's why you're still alive, you're needed. Sterling leaned back, disgusted. There was one narrative for the Germans, and another one, hidden from view, which he could not work out, and that was what infuriated him. You despise me, she continued, calmly, because I don't pretend. And I got to you, which you hate more than anything in the world. She banged down the broken glass. I despise you, Sterling said, icily, because you are a bitch who enjoys it. Josephine shrugged, airily. It's effectiveness, not enjoyment, which is important here. But yes, she added, grinning, I did enjoy killing Eve. Josephine savored the barb, as it hit the mark, savored Sterling fighting his urge to choke her to death. So, she continued brightly, what do you know about the invasion of Sicily? And how does your brother fit into the picture? 88,888,888. Why are you so desperate to break me out of this fucking castle? It was after century change, and the moon was setting. Sterling, his dormitory relocation having been revoked for being uncooperative, stared at the ceiling, until his eyes grew tired enough to close. They opened quickly when he heard the door. No broken glass now, Josephine Joyce, Sterling mocked, when he saw her in the doorway. Too slow, Josephine thought, too much prowling. The Germans think I'm breaking you, she told him, getting straight to the point, closing the door behind her. But Sterling wasn't ready to stop. Instead, he got to his feet. What's to stop me wringing that little skinny neck of yours? He baited. Right here, right now. The Germans wouldn't miss you. You add nothing to their work. Josephine ignored him, and put down Paddy's letter onto the table, still scored by the glass pieces she had broken and he had scattered. Tomorrow, you will give me information, she told him. It will be secret coordinates for a supply drop, fake, of course, but plausible enough to send their trucks on a wild goose chase. In return, I'll reward your cooperation by recommending your permanent move into the officers' quarters. Sterling looked at her, aghast. You want me to walk into that yard as a collaborator? To have my peers spit on me? Did you not have that when you last took your anger out on me? She shot back. And you found something out that you will not admit to yourself. Despite herself, Josephine shivered. No, I want you to feel exactly what you are, she spat. A man who survives while his betters die. But if you want to get to that escape committee, you'll play the coward. You'll feed me the lies I want, and I'll tell Eggers that you are cooperating. It took a second longer for Sterling to seize her throat, but longer than Josephine's primal instinct demanded to let go. He looked at the table as he backed away, his chest heaving at the effort. Josephine stepped backwards, the burning under her chin focusing her attention. It hurt, and Sterling realized he had drawn blood. Realized too that confinement was causing him to become more monstrous, more violent. If only you were more like Bill, their mother would say. Yes, mocked his inner voice, cool, calm and collected Bill. Josephine, however, stood her ground and she wiped the blood with the back of her hand, a few spots appearing on her uniform. That impassiveness. Sterling turned to the stone wall and screamed silently at it in frustration. You want your coordinates, Sterling said, his voice hollow. You want to show your masters that you've broken the Phantom Major? He shrugged. Fine. But if I give them to you, you will get me out. Major Sterling, Josephine replied, stepping unarmored towards the man who had just attacked her. She lowered her voice. I handed you the key to this castle, risking my own life, so you could leave yesterday. Why did you not? Why did you? He narrowed his eyes, and waited for the answer. Josephine dared. Because your brother told me to, or hang, she told Sterling, banking on him refusing to believe her. My brother, he scoffed. Who sent you to charm me with a stone? He placed it on the table next to Paddy's letter. Next you'll be telling me that my friend is your brother too. Josephine smiled. Half-brother, she confirmed. Josephine had won. No chance that he would ever believe that, and the evidence that she had been at Moosey and that Eve had betrayed her, and Henry, and all the others so would gnaw and nag at him incessantly. Good. Josephine felt a cold surge of triumph as the chessboard was assembled. 88,888,888. A junior officer entered the room, breathless. General de Gaulle is asking for the confirmation on the Paris drop, Mademoiselle Manser. He says the resistance is waiting. Eve didn't look up. She was busy burning a small slip of paper, the genuine security ciphers that could have saved those agents' lives. Tell the general the signals are sent, she said, her voice a flat, calm. Tell him the radio games are proceeding exactly as planned. The British will have their heroes, and the French will have their martyrs. Eve Mansour watched the last spark of the paper die out in the ashtray. She felt no guilt. To her, the war between the Axis and the Allies was a domestic dispute between two dying giants. She was simply the one handing them the knife, waiting for the moment to walk over their corpses toward a free Algeria. 88,888,888. July 1943. Dearest Mother, Robert Blair Main wrote, we took August 2 off the Germans and immediately had to stop, because the army is waiting for the Americans to arrive somewhere else and applaud themselves. I used the pause to march the men up a mountain with full kit. This was unpopular but necessary. Bill Sterling tells me I'm no longer in the desert and that the local priest has complained about my manners. The priest later betrayed us to the Germans, so I remain comfortable with my approach. We were also ordered to befriend the local mafia, who failed to turn up to a peace meeting they'd arranged, leaving us instead to be bombed by Stukas. Lesson learned. The army has invented two SAS, which I consider theft. They arrived led by Jim Armands, who I'm taking with me regardless of orders. One of his men, Henry Druce, has renamed himself Henty Drake and behaves, duck-like, accordingly. His silk top hat is a sight to behold. We're moving on to Canizaro now. I'm tired, annoyed, and still breathing. Standards remain high. Your loving son, Robert. The censors took most of it, but the gist still came across. Margaret Main filed Paddy's letter with the rest, before glancing over at another letter, offering her son the chance to become a partner in a solicitor's firm, and to pay for his law degree. 88,888,888. The air in the French intelligence villa was thick with the scent of jasmine and stale Gauloises, but Eve Mansour moved through it like a ghost made of ice. She stood over a mahogany desk, her eyes tracking the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of a teleprinter in the corner. To David Sterling, she was an ally with a sharp tongue and a useful map, and to the British High Command, she was a necessary conduit. But to Eve, they were all merely expendable distractions. She picked up a folder marked Operations, Circuit Prosper. Inside were the names of 20 SO operatives scheduled to drop into the Loire Valley. These were men and women with families, believers in the Grand Alliance, fools who thought the liberation of Paris was the center of the universe. Eve didn't care about Paris. Her heart was 1,000 miles west, in the mountains of Algeria, where her people were bled dry by the same French masters she now served. Himmler would have her move on to Italy, and there, meet up with her lover. They needed more intelligence and fast, for the SO collapse was also closing sources of information she needed to trade more SAS information to guarantee arms for Algeria, and the Joyce bitch was proving damned slow. Carmelite papers had arrived and she would be traveling to see him in Italy. Once her contact in Berlin had pulled the necessary strings, she would get her information. Sterling would be relocated and they would be reunited.